Just my thoughts on this weekend's big fights, not only in MMA, but in boxing, of course. UFC Fight Night 147. It's Jorge Masvidal taking on Darren Till. Let's start with MMA. And then in boxing, it's Errol Spence Jr. versus Mikey Garcia. I am doing the SiriusXM post-fight show for Mikey Garcia, Errol Spence Jr. Awesome. So check it out on pay-per-view, get on SiriusXM, listen to me break it down. First time doing boxing for SiriusXM, so that's awesome. Appreciate the opportunity. Starting with MMA, the X's and O's of Darren Till versus Jorge Masvidal. Darren Till, the obvious thing, is huge. He is middleweight sized, taking on a guy in Jorge Masvidal who made 155 pounds. So he's way bigger. Obviously the harder puncher just because of size, a knockout guy. Both guys are technical. Both guys like the stand-up game. They both stand kind of tall. They both kind of let their chins hang out. Darren Till is the kind of guy, because of his size advantage, who invites a brawl. So he tends to be a little bit looser with his hands than Masvidal. Masvidal can get a little loose, but he tightens up sometimes. Till likes inviting you to brawl by opening up his hands. Let's go in and do it. I'm bigger, I'm stronger, I have no problem with that. Masvidal can tighten up and be a little more tactical and technical. Even at 55, he wasn't like gigantic. He wasn't a one-punch knockout guy at 55. So he is used to kind of being smaller and having to rely on his size and his speed and his technique and his size advantage. Obviously, that translates into a big power disparity. So Masvidal has to fight very tight, very technical, great combinations, really accurate with his strikes. Darren Till has to go in and make it a brawl and be the guy who is naturally bigger and can give a shot and can take one. So you see the difference tactically. You see definitely the difference physically. Darren Till way bigger. But the X factor here to me, going beyond the X's and O's into the intangibles. If you watched my post-fight on Dos Santos versus Derek Lewis, an up-and-coming fighter, usually with an exciting style, usually a knockout guy, who goes against the champion and hasn't had a lot of big fights and gets blown out by the champ, they almost always lose their next fight. Always. Not almost always. Derek Lewis, for example, against Junior Dos Santos. He lost to DC. Next fight to Dos Santos, he loses. Francis Ngannou against Stipe. The fight after against Derek Lewis, ironically, different guy. Different guy. Didn't throw any punches, wasn't aggressive, questioning himself. Got back on track, but that fight after getting blown out by the champ, fighters just tend to go, God, am I really that good? Do I need to change things? Do I need a new camp? Do I need this? Do I need that? Especially if you're not that experienced and have a lot of big fights, it kind of can send you into a tailspin. Now, fighters recover, but usually that fight after, they're not the same guy. Volkan Oezdemir, blown out by DC, lost to Anthony Smith. Two things. Usually you take on a contender. This is actually an interesting fight for Darren Till because he didn't get another contender. He got another guy that's definitely beatable for him, style-wise. A guy who stays on the feet a lot, a guy who's naturally smaller. It's a winnable fight for Darren Till. Usually after you take on the champ and you get blown out, so you're not really in that contender mix as much anymore, you get the next up-and-coming contender. Till isn't. He's getting a guy who could be a contender, but needs to, is on a 2-fight skid. He needs to straighten things out to become a contender. Interesting fight choice. Very winnable for him. That X factor to me is very interesting. Very interesting. Almost always I would go with Till in a matchup like this. But I almost always go against the guy who just got blown out by the champ in his first title opportunity. So that collision, I'm going with Masvidal because of that. I mean, we'll see very quickly if Darren Till is gun shy. You can't be gun shy against Masvidal. You just can't. So if he's questioned himself and he has that kind of post-championship fight down, Masvidal is definitely going to take advantage. He's a veteran, very sound on his feet, very accurate, has a lot of gifts. He'll take advantage of that. So I'm going with Masvidal simply because most of the time someone in Darren Till's position has trouble winning that fight after taking on the champion and getting blown out. Moving on to boxing, Errol Spence Jr. versus Mikey Garcia. Once again, the X's and O's all kind of favor Errol Spence Jr. Mikey Garcia coming up from lightweight, going up to welterweight, reminds me a lot of Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran. Although Roberto Duran, an all-time great lightweight, an all-time great fighter, period. Pound for pound, he's top 5 in my opinion. But an all-time great lightweight moving up to welterweight. A couple differences. Of course, Mikey Garcia did have a stop at 140. But the size advantage, the technical advantages, those are all Errol Spence Jr. He's naturally bigger. He's a southpaw with a great jab. Excellent technique. Doesn't have any big gaps. He's young. He's hungry. Has had fewer fights, but technically there aren't a lot of gaps. He doesn't do a lot of wild stuff that lets a fighter in. Hasn't really shown any problems with the gas. So the X's and O's kind of all favor Errol Spence Jr. Mikey Garcia has gone to decisions last 3 fights. So the intangibles that favor Garcia, if you look at the Lamont Peterson fight, for example, for Errol Spence Jr., it looked like he was in control from start to finish. Just working the jab, tight with his left hand, landing his power shots, excellent footwork. It was his the whole time. If you're Mikey Garcia, you want to get in the kid's head. Make it a brawl. Make it ugly. Make it like the first Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray Leonard fight, where Duran was kind of in his face and Sugar Ray was kind of on his heels because he found himself in a firefight. He's a technician who found himself in a firefight. You want that kind of fight. You want, hey, look, I'm 39-0. I've been through a lot of great fights. I can go to war longer than you. A bloody, dirty, difficult, vicious fight, that favors me. You might have all the technique, you might have the size, you might have all the physical gifts. I can go to war longer and harder than you can. That's the kind of fight Mikey Garcia wants. Stay in his face, throw a lot of punches, get him moving backward, get him on his heels. That kind of fight is Mikey Garcia's fight. The Latin warrior going in there, throwing hands, a lot of punches from the beginning, and put this kid in a defensive mode. Kell Brook gave him some problems early. You want to be kind of that mode. Jump on him and get in his head. Young, talented, technical fighters who have a lot of success, make them doubt themselves. Make them wonder, am I really ready for this guy? I'm pretty, I'm beautiful, this is ugly. This is difficult, this is grueling. Hasn't really been in those kind of fights yet. So if you're Mikey Garcia, you want to take the kid places he hasn't been before. And that's the way I see it in this fight. Definitely the X's and O's go with Errol Spence Jr. But the intangible that we don't know about him is how does he handle being bloody and stepping back and having a guy in his chest for 12 rounds. Because that's where Mikey Garcia has to be. My pick, though, is still Errol Spence. I'm still going with Errol Spence Jr. I think he's a great fighter, really on the cusp of real greatness, true greatness. But he has to get around a very tough fighter, Mikey Garcia. And somebody was asking me, I did Sirius XM with Jerry Cooney, and one of the things he said is why is Mikey Garcia taking this fight? And I said, well, I think he's accomplished everything he needs to accomplish south of welterweight. Welterweight is an all-time great division. It's everybody knows who the welterweight champ is, and I think he kind of did his bit at lightweight. Not a whole lot of challenges from there. Of course, Lomachenko, of course, but I think Errol Spence is a big step-up challenge for him. Like, hey, this is a legacy fight. This is a legacy fight. If I beat Errol Spence Jr., that does a lot for my legacy, and I think that means a lot to him. If Roberto Duran stays at lightweight, who knows how many more fights he could have won. Maybe stayed at junior welterweight or something like that, although him versus Aaron Pryor would have been awesome. So things like that occur to me. That's how I see this fight breaking down. But I'll be doing the Sirius XM post-fight show for boxing. Check it out, Sirius XM 93, Fight Nation. Okay, I'm on there. Post-fight, Spence versus Garcia. And check out the UFC. I think it's going to be an excellent main event. So check out the fight weekend. Let me know how it goes, what you guys think. Of course, leave it in the comments section. Subscribe, give me a like if you enjoy it, and I'll be seeing you guys this weekend. Later.